Imagine sitting in quiet prayer, expecting to feel this profound connection to God, but instead feeling, well, absolutely nothing.
Right. It can be incredibly jarring.
It really is. I mean, your mind is dry, your heart feels cold, and the silence just seems completely empty. In those moments, it is so easy to believe that your love for God has died, or that you are just failing entirely in the spiritual life.
It is a very painful struggle, and it is one that almost everyone faces. But today, we're going to explore why that painful feeling of emptiness might actually be the greatest sign of true charity.
Welcome to this ongoing reflection series where we invite you to step away from the noise of the day and enter into a space of quiet contemplation. Today, we are undertaking one intentional, cohesive exploration of the love of God.
We will be reflecting on the spiritual teachings found in four really profound meditations. Those are the precept of charity, the essence of charity, the act of love, and finally, the life of love.
And our mission here is to explore the true nature of charity. I think in our modern vocabulary, charity is often reduced to, well, a fleeting emotion or maybe just a simple act of philanthropy.
Right, like volunteering or writing a check.
Exactly. But in the interior life, charity is an absolute precept without limits. It is the primary virtue of the spiritual life. It is a voluntary act of the human will, and it is a reality that is meant to grow continuously every single day until it reaches its perfection in eternity.
To properly grasp the magnitude of this reality, as it is explored in the meditation titled The Precept of Charity, we first really have to understand the mechanics of how this virtue operates.
Because it functions differently than almost every other virtue we practice, right?
Precisely. Consider the moral virtues, things like temperance, justice, or fortitude. Moral virtues operate on the principle of a golden mean.
So they are essentially about finding the perfect balance between two extremes.
Exactly. For example, courage is the golden mean between cowardice on one side and recklessness on the other. It is possible to have a deficiency of a moral virtue, but it is equally possible to have an excess, which then actually becomes a fault.
I see. So you can be too reckless or you can be too strict in your temperance to the point of harming your own health.
Right. But charity belongs to the theological virtues. And theological virtues have God himself as their direct object.
And because God is infinite, there can be no golden mean.
Exactly. The true measure of loving God is to love him entirely without measure. I mean, it is simply impossible to love him too much, just as it is impossible to exceed his infinite lovableness.
The demand of this virtue is absolute. We see it commanded directly in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 12, verse 30, where we are instructed to love the Lord our God with our whole heart, with our whole soul, with our whole mind, and with our whole strength.
The language there is uncompromising.
It really is. It leaves no room for compartmentalization. We cannot reserve a comfortable portion of our heart for God and then, portion out the rest to the world.
Right. And the spiritual tradition actually identifies two distinct degrees of this charity. The first degree is preferring God above all creatures, which fundamentally means making the firm choice to avoid sin and refusing to offend him.
But there is a higher degree as well.
There is. The higher degree calls for preferring God's good pleasure over absolutely everything else. And this higher degree requires a total purification of our attachments, demanding an exclusive gift of the heart.
That exclusivity is a concept we intuitively understand on a human level, I think. When you truly love someone, whether in a deep friendship or a marriage, that love naturally carries a certain totalitarian quality.
That is a good way to put it. It demands exclusive affection.
Right. A marriage begins to fracture the very moment one person starts making reservations or dividing their loyalty. The human heart recognizes that profound intimacy requires total, undivided self-giving.
It does. But applying that to God can be daunting.
Extremely daunting. When I hear that charity demands this exclusive affection, it sounds almost impossible. We are living in a world of constant fragmentation.
Absolutely.
Our attention is divided by endless scrolling, the constant thrum of career anxieties, the pursuit of immediate comfort. We are distracted, frail creatures.
We are.
So if human love is so easily distracted, demanding our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength for the infinite God feels like a standard designed to make us fail, how can anyone actually achieve this total, undivided love?
The answer to that profound struggle lies in the necessity of renunciation.
Pronunciation. That is an intimidating word.
It is, and it is often misunderstood as a punishing rejection of the world, but it is actually a deeply liberating reality. St. John of the Cross, in his work Ascent of Mount Carmel, explains the mechanism of how this actually works.
What does he say?
He teaches that the strength of the soul consists in its faculties, its passions, and its desires. When your desires are scattered among 1,000 earthly attachments, whether that is anxiety over your status, a craving for comfort, or an obsession with distraction, your soul's strength is entirely dispersed.
So you are left spiritually exhausted.
Exactly. Renunciation is the practice of freeing the soul from these scattered attachments. By gently but firmly detaching our desires from created things, we gather the fragmented pieces of our attention and affection.
I see. So only when the faculties of the soul are freed from earthly ties can the will direct its entire strength exclusively toward God.
Right. Renunciation is not about despising creation. It is about gathering your scattered strength so that you are actually capable of loving God with your whole heart.
If charity demands such total renunciation and the gathering of all our fragmented strength, it forces us to look closely at why it holds this supreme place in the interior life.
Which brings us perfectly to the insights found in the meditation titled The Excellence of Charity.
Right. Charity is not just one virtue placed alongside others. It is the very lifeblood of the supernatural life. Without it, there is only spiritual death.
It is the animating force that makes us friends of God and actual partakers in his divine nature.
And the absolute preeminence of charity becomes clearest when we look at it through the lens of eternity, doesn't it?
It does. In heaven, faith and hope will eventually cease to exist. We will no longer need faith because the veil will be lifted and we will finally see God face to face.
And we will no longer need hope because we will fully possess him.
Exactly. But charity remains entirely unchanged for all eternity. This is the profound truth St. Paul reveals in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 8 and 13. Love never falls away.
Because it is the only virtue that crosses the threshold of eternity.
Right. And because of that, St. Thomas Aquinas teaches that charity is the form and mother of all virtues. It is the root that gives life and supernatural merit to every other good action we perform. Without this root, every other virtue is ultimately hollow.
To picture how this mechanism actually transforms our actions, you might think of a dormant winter landscape just before dawn.
I like that image.
Without the sun, the landscape is cold, gray, and lifeless. The shapes of the trees and the mountains are there, but they lack vitality and color. This dormant landscape represents our daily actions, our duties, and our ordinary works without charity.
Right, they're just empty actions.
Exactly. But when the sun rises, its light suddenly gives color, warmth, beauty, and immense value to everything it touches. The sunlight does not change the physical objects themselves. I mean, a rock is still a rock, a tree is still a tree, but it completely transforms their reality.
That is a beautiful way to understand it. In the same way, charity acts as the sun rising over our lives. It gives eternal value to the most hidden, mundane tasks.
So sweeping a floor, sitting in heavy traffic without giving in to anger, or listening patiently to a troubled friend, when illuminated by charity, those become works of eternal significance.
Absolutely. And building on that image of the sun illuminating the landscape, we must realize that even the most dramatic and outwardly impressive actions remain in the dark if they lack this light.
Even great spiritual works.
Even those. Massive works of the apostolate, brilliant theological writing, or even the supreme sacrifice of martyrdom profit us absolutely nothing if they are not animated by charity.
That is a sobering thought.
It is. St. Teresa of Jesus emphasizes this repeatedly in exclamations of the soul to God. She points out that it is love alone that gives value to all things. The spiritual life is not measured by the magnitude or the visibility of our works, but entirely by the magnitude of the love behind them.
So a small, hidden act done with great love is infinitely more pleasing to God than a massive public undertaking driven by self-interest, ego, or pride.
Precisely.
Knowing that charity gives eternal value to every single action brings us to a very practical daily challenge, which is deeply explored in the meditation titled The Act of Love.
And this is where the rubber meets the road for most of us.
Right. If charity is the engine of our spiritual life, how do we actively exercise it, especially in those inevitable seasons when we feel spiritually exhausted or entirely overwhelmed? We are conditioned by modern culture to assume that love is primarily an emotion.
We really are. We expect to feel a warm, sensible affection when we pray, or a deep sense of fulfillment when we serve others.
But it is essential to clarify a vital spiritual distinction here, one that often causes immense confusion. The substance of true love is not found in the emotions, nor is it found in sensible feelings.
No, the substance of true charity resides entirely in the will, Emotions are subjective, fluctuating, and heavily dependent on our physical health, our sleep, or just our external circumstances.
True love, however, is the firm, steadfast determination to wish God well, to seek his will above our own, and to conform perfectly to his good pleasure.
Our feelings do not dictate the reality of our love. Our deliberate choices do.
This distinction between the will and the emotions is completely revolutionary. You can see the same reality in human relationships. Doing the dishes for your spouse late at night when you are completely exhausted, stressed, and feeling absolutely no romantic spark, that is a far stronger act of the will.
Right, and therefore a much purer act of love than buying them flowers during the euphoria of the honeymoon phase.
The lack of emotion does not invalidate the love. It actually proves its strength. Yet, in the spiritual life, it is so easy to interpret a lack of feeling as a lack of love.
Very easy.
Oh,
You might find yourself sitting in prayer, feeling entirely cold, dry, and unresponsive, and conclude that you are failing.
St. John of the Cross dismantles this exact anxiety in Dark Night of the Soul and spiritual maxims, doesn't he?
He does. He explains that union with God is wrought purely by the act of the will, not by sensible feelings. In fact, he reveals something that turns our modern understanding of spirituality upside down.
Which is
That spiritual aridity, that painful absence of emotional consolation, is actually a profound grace.
a grace. That is hard to accept when you're in the middle of it.
It is, but think about it. When emotional sweetness fails, the soul is forced to love God purely for himself rather than for the good feelings he provides.
I see. So when you choose to remain faithful to prayer and duty despite feeling nothing, the act of your will becomes even more resolute, more pure, and significantly more meritorious.
Exactly. You are loving the God of consolations rather than the consolations of God. Saint Teresa of Jesus echoes this wisdom in Interior Castle and Conceptions of the Love of God, noting that true love consists in the steadfast determination to please God in both the bitter and the sweet.
If true charity is located in the firm determination of the will rather than in fluctuating emotions, we are then faced with the question of cultivation. How do we ensure that this love grows continuously from our current imperfect state all the way into eternity?
This lifelong cultivation is the focus of the meditation titled The Life of Love. Our love here on earth should not be a static reality. It must strive constantly for the qualities it will possess perfectly in heaven.
And those qualities are purity, intensity, and continuity.
Right. Let's look at purity first. Purity of love means seeking God's glory and his will alone. It is the sincere daily prayer of thy will be done, which requires us to forget our own self-interest, our desire to be noticed, and even our desire for spiritual consolations.
And the second quality of this heavenly love is intensity. St. Augustine teaches that love is the weight that draws the soul into God.
Just as gravity pulls a physical object toward the center of the earth, charity is the spiritual gravity that pulls the soul toward the heart of the Trinity.
St. John of the Cross builds on this mechanism in Living Flame of Love, explaining that the strongest love is the most unitive love.
Right, and we increase this intensity not by trying to generate more emotion, which is outside our control, but by exercising our will generously in all our actions. Every time we choose the good, we increase the gravitational pull of our soul toward God.
Which brings us to the third quality, continuity. In heaven, our love will be a continuous, unbroken act of adoration.
And on earth, we strive for this continuity by making deliberate, frequent acts of love throughout the day. This practice keeps the will engaged and constantly turned toward God amidst the noise of our daily responsibilities.
This highlights the vital, irreplaceable role of mental prayer in the Christian life. Prayer is not merely a task to check off a daily list so we can feel productive,
No, definitely not.
nor is it just a designated time to present our anxieties and requests. It is the essential meeting place where this divine friendship is nurtured. Just as human friends require dedicated, intentional time together to deepen their bond, to understand one another's minds, and to align their wills, we require dedicated time and mental prayer to deepen our charity.
It is in the quiet of prayer that we gather our scattered faculties, pulling them away from our screens, our worries, and our ambitions, and deliberately point them back toward God, reinforcing that spiritual gravity.
Every generous, hidden act of the will during those moments of prayer and throughout the day actively increases our capacity for this charity.
We do not have to wait for heaven to begin the life of love. We begin it right now, exactly where we are.
We use our daily prayer, our ordinary duties, our family life, and our professional work as the raw material to make continuous, deliberate choices for God's good pleasure.
Precisely. Every time we choose patience over frustration when dealing with a difficult colleague, or faithfulness over comfort when we are tired, we are actively expanding our soul's capacity to receive and return the infinite love of God.
As we draw this reflection to a close, we can see the beautiful, cohesive journey we have undertaken today. We began by recognizing the absolute command to love God without measure, understanding that true charity requires the total, undivided gift of our heart.
We reflected on the eternal excellence of this charity, seeing it as the sun that gives life, color, and eternal value to every human action, no matter how small.
We located the true substance of this love not in fleeting emotions, but in the steadfast, resolute choice of the will, especially when we feel dry or exhausted.
And finally, we saw how this will is nurtured through purity, intensity, and continuity, growing steadily throughout our earthly life into the perfection of heaven.
We invite you, as you go forward in your ordinary Christian life, to put this profound reality into practice. We offer you one concrete, restrained invitation.
Sometime today, make one pure, deliberate act of the will. Choose God's preference over your own in a small, ordinary matter. It could be holding your tongue when you naturally wish to complain, or performing a hidden act of service for someone in your home.
Do this completely without seeking or expecting any emotional consolation or recognition in return. Let it be a pure, simple gift of your will to the God who loves you.
In every moment of spiritual dryness or profound joy, in every season of clarity or darkness, you are being continually drawn by God's everlasting love.
Rest in the knowledge that your steadfast choices, however small and hidden they may seem, are the true measure of your charity, echoing forever into eternity.